Let's see how we can protect the edges with a very simple stitch, and we can either have it temporary protection, like for Altizza, when we still don't know how big it will be in the end, or we can have it final, but this depends on how we make the distances between the steps. So I'm using 3 out of 6 threads, cotton, and I start with the first step, and then getting the thread with my left hand if necessary. I will push through the fabric like this and get out, creating a loop. This loop is enough protection. If I repeat it again and again and again, it will stop the fabric from decomposing. So I will protect the edges. It's nothing really difficult. Each time I return to put the needle through the fabric once more, I see that the loop is already somehow waiting for me. I don't need to arrange it all the time. And now if I want to make something not temporary but something final, final protection, like as I used for my shirt, I'll simply make closer steps each time I get through the fabric. 4 or 5 threads, and this protection is good enough. I don't need to use a frame while I'm working because the hem fabric is not soft, it's quite stiff, and it stays without the need of a frame. And for the Romanian embroidery, you'd see that we push the needle through the fabric and taking it out in one single move. So it's not like we go it like this. No, we always, with a angled push, we also come out with a needle in the same move. And then when the thread is about to finish, I make sure that I fix it in the fabric. I'll make one solid hold here, and then I will go to the left, and then I will return to the other side with small steps inside out the fabric. Because now if I cut the thread here, it will not come out. It will be held by this U-turn here. So this is a temporary protection for the edge of the fabric. When I want to make a final protection for the edge of the fabric, like a proper hem, I have to bend it once and twice, this way making sure the edge of the fabric is well hidden and no threads will come out like it happens on the side here. And with a knot that will hide there, I will start to make small stitches in order to fix the edge of the hem on the fabric. And I could take 2 and 4 threads and make a loop, not very tight, and then again on the edge of the hem, again 2 4 threads, and I'll go through the loop. Again, I'll move a little bit to the left. I'll count again 4 threads and pass with the needle through this loop, and I'll move more and more to the left each time, counting a step of 4 threads and passing through this loop to create little holes in the fabric. After wash they won't be so visible, but we want to make them discreet, not really to look like hole, but just to give a slight impression of steps. And then again through this, again through the hem, and then make sure we always time to time we turn a little bit more of the fabric, we bend it once and twice, and prepare the hem in our left hand just to have it ready for when we move through the loop and left. And once more, and then we'll check on the other side, which will be the face of the fabric. This is the back. So here is the face of the fabric. That's the way it will look like in the end. And we continue like this, but if it is difficult for you to keep bending the hem as you go, you can always do it on the whole piece of the fabric, and then quickly, just to fix it, you can go with the needle this way quickly to make sure it stays in place. If you don't want to trouble yourself each time you move to the left, but you can always do it little by little, once you progress with little holes. So this is the way we will create double little holes, distance from the edge of the fabric, distance a little bit from the protection, because we might need these double little holes to unite 2 pieces of fabric between themselves. So we will come with a thread, and then move down 2 threads, 1 to the second hole, and then we will return on a diagonal 4 threads to the left from the place where we started, and we'll create a vertical, another one, and we'll return to repeat everything. Horizontal and diagonals are on the back of the fabric. So here, which will be the front, we have only vertical and horizontal lines, and all the diagonals are on the back. So again, we start from this point, which is the origin. We go 2 down, and from the same move we come out 4 threads to the left from the origin. We'll go to close the diagonal, and we'll be 2 threads down from this point, and we'll continue like this. And in the meanwhile, on the back we have the diagonals for all this. Why it is also useful to do this, not just cute or beautiful decorative on the fabric, but this way we make sure, counting the threads right now when we're making these double little holes, we make sure the keys will be constructed with a constant step, because we won't be counting threads when we're making the keys. We will make the keys using these double little holes, because we will bend the fabric this way, and this part reinforced and segmented already, it will become the edge of the fabric, and when we will construct the keys, we will pass the needle through these holes that are reinforced with this fabric right now. So it's important to remember that every stitch, it has a functional aspect, both aesthetical aspect. It's like, if we have to do something useful, let's make it beautiful, but also it cannot be something beautiful without a purpose. So it is always something between useful and pleasant for the eye. And we continue like this all along the edge of the fabric. If we want to make double little holes also for the classic hem, we come with a thread 3 out of 6. We come out, we go 2 threads down, and then 4 to the left on a horizontal move, and then we return and move to the next hole on diagonal. It will have a diagonal on the back. Again, we move 4 to the left, tense the thread a little bit, finish the horizontal, and on a diagonal we return in the little hole, the edge of the hem. You can go as fast as you like, but make sure you tense the thread a little bit in order to create these little holes in the fabric. We'll have diagonals on the back. You might think of this kind of work to be boring. It's not. You can use this time to relax, unwind, or you can do this work if you meet with a friend and you need to talk a little bit. It's not something to require concentration, and once you have a chat, this will be done in no time. When you look at the time, it will be maybe 20 minutes, half hour for one piece of fabric, and in the end I think you will consider it worth it, this little effort, because look, it looks like it's more in detail, more careful, more ornate, a little bit, but it makes a difference. So now embroidery is the most fun part, not only because it brings color, but it's very easy to do. And yes, indeed, we need to count threads, but it's always 2 threads. And we usually, for this type of fabric, for a daily shirt, working shirt, we often use wool thread, so it's quite thick. So we go through the fabric and we keep one part of the thread, because ideal would be not to have knots on the back. So we will keep part of the thread out, and after we finish this half, we will return to this one and use it, and we'll have no knot on the back. So here we go, we have the thread out, and now we're used to make just diagonals, go 2 threads up and to the left, push the needle through the fabric, and from the same move return 2 threads left from the point where we started from the origin, and we create a diagonal on the face of the fabric, but we don't tense the thread, we leave it loose. After wash, the fabric will shrink a lot, and people might wonder, how was it possible to pass such a fat yarn through this fabric? Well, this is how, because we work on unwashed fabric, and we repeat as many times as it is necessary. So we don't do cross stitches. This is a technique that recently joined the club of Romanian embroidery techniques. It is much more efficient to use a thick thread and create just diagonals on the face of the fabric. Of course, we try as much as possible to organize the direction of these diagonals, but they don't always have to be in this direction, because sometimes, especially when we use silk, we want to create another effects, and we see this way when we have to go up, we keep the same direction. On the back of the fabric, we will have only straight lines. So this is how we use the optimum quantity of the thread, minimum on the back, maximum of effect, visual effect on the face of the fabric. See, the back is just vertical lines, and we know that always the diagonal is bigger. And now we need to go up again, and we will continue like we started, changing the direction of the needle towards ourselves. And in the end, it's important to cover all the fabric, to cover it well. It's important that we don't see the fabric through the embroidery. That's why we leave the thread quite loose. In time, our hand will learn how to do this movement equally. So now when, let's say, we're finished with this part, we go on the back to finish it, and we will pass the needle like this and make the U-turn through the back of the embroidery. It is enough to fix the thread here, because we have this U-turn which is fixing everything. And now we can cut the yarn and continue the embroidery with the other half of the thread that we left on top. Usually for wool, I'm using needle size 22. It takes a little bit sometimes for the yarn to pass through. And now again we can continue like this, or let's see what happens if, just for experiment, we change the direction of the diagonal. This way, again, if we are working, let's say, with silk, the light will be reflected in a different way, and it will look like we created a special visual effect just by changing this direction. So this is it, half diagonals, verticals on the back. That's it. Very simple, very efficient in covering the fabric. One move, one single move, going in and out for each step. And now we can change the direction once again, especially, let's say, if we have flowers, rich flowers. This will add to the visual impression, and it's very, very easy to do. When we are done, we go on the back of the fabric once again to fix the edge of the yarn. And we're done. Now let's see what we can do if our thread is not thick enough to cover all the fabric from one single move. Let's work on vertical this time, and we create diagonals the same way with a step 2 and 2, and we're not pleased by the way the thread is covering the fabric, so we work on a short distance for 6 points, and then we will pass with the needle through all the diagonals we created like through a tunnel, and we'll create a common diagonal for all of them and close it here, and we'll continue this other line. Again, we don't need a cross stitch for each stitch we do. We are making only half and then one big diagonal for all of them. So if we have 5 points, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, if would be to make cross stitches, we'll have 10 lines. But this way we only have 6 because we have 5 diagonals, small ones, and one big one going under all of them. But again, the condition is to keep the thread loose, not to tense it, never tense it, because this way we will have enough space to pass with a needle through everything. 5, and again one big diagonal for everybody. Close it, and once more. It's all made to be efficient, because a Romanian blouse usually requires a lot of embroidery. You don't need to waste time making 2 lines for each point. You have to be as efficient as possible, because sometimes ceremonial shirt can require 100,000 stitches. Imagine that if there will be cross stitches, you might never finish in time. So we're done, and this is the back. You can see only horizontal lines, which means minimum of the thread wasted, not visible, not exposed on the back, and maximum of the thread it's on the face of the fabric where it's visible. Sometimes when we are making the embroidery along the hems, just like a borderline, we use a more elongated step, because this time we make it 4 on horizontal and 2 on vertical. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and we push and come out 2 threads away from the point we started, and then we repeat with parallel lines. And we can notice that even if we use a thinner thread, it covers the fabric better because of the elongated lines we use. This kind of stitch is called shinatau, and we kept the other half of the thread in order to avoid making knots on the back of the fabric. So this is Cusute, small elongated lines. But when we count again 2 threads each time. It was just the first line, the one we started everything with, that needed in the first move. It needed us to count 4 threads for it. And from there we continue from 2 and 2 and 2. Cusute. And we will continue, and when we are done, like always, we go on the back of the fabric and go make a U-turn to make sure the thread will stay and we don't have any knots. Sometimes we might need to make a chain stitch, sometimes with metallic thread. And for this one, again, we count the threads, we come out, we push the needle through in the same place from where we started, and we count 2, 3 threads in front. We'll pass through this loop and not go very tight. We will keep it loose because we need to go with the needle once more through the same place. Count 3 in front and then repeat, and the left finger will help us keep this loop in shape and make space for our next step. This is the chain stitch. It's very simple, and sometimes we use it to fill in bigger shapes. That's about it. One of the most used techniques, along with the other ones that I showed previously. You can always use it to make turns. I mean, you can fix it in the fabric, come out again if you want to change the direction, and then move, counting the threads into different angles. When we go to the back, when we're done, make sure we hold this loop. Yes, we don't go through it, but we go over it. Otherwise, it will all fall apart. We can do this, and then in order to fix it properly, we can go to the neighborhood where we find plenty of parallel lines to do the U-turn, and we're done. Let's see now how we can unite with keys 2 different pieces of fabric that are prepared, both of them, with a temporary protection, and we said about it that if we make it more dense, it can become final protection. It is resistant enough. So we need to bend the edges and make these double little holes become the really the edge of the fabric. And then we make sure we arrange both pieces to be united, to stay parallel. we'll start from this piece that is close to us, and we will fix the thread. I'm using linen thread with the color just to make it more visible. And I will make, the first step is always most difficult. I will make a loop on the edge of the fabric here, just to have the start, and I will go to the other piece of fabric and create a similar loop mirrored on the other side. And I'm trying to make sure I keep them close together, because only now I can fix everything in place with a third loop. And then I'm passing through these double holes on top, above the thread, through a loop. And now I move to this place and make a loop on the previous little foot of linen thread, and then I move on the other piece of fabric, pass through the double little hole through the loop, and then I will fix everything going underneath this foot, come out again through the loop. The loop will, I always make a loop for each step, because that's what makes everything stay in place. I move to the left, again I go through the double little holes above the thread, create a loop, hold this thread in place until I fix it from the previous foot, and repeat. Again, I keep it here and make sure it stays in place until I fix it and I'm ready to go to the next move. Again, the loop, hold it until I fix it properly, and then move on. You will speed up very soon once you learn that you have to alternate, and the principle is always to move to the left to make a progress after you made this extra reassurance, always going through the loop of the fabric. The advantage is that all these steps will be equal because we counted the threads when we worked on creating these double little holes. So now we don't need to count any more threads. They are already counted for us. We just need to step from double little hole to another. So this is quite easy. It is important when you hold these two pieces to keep them parallel, yes, but also to make sure you don't tense the one that is closer to you, that you somehow get to hold it tighter, because if we tense one piece of fabric more, they might not come even at the end. This piece of fabric that is closer to us might become shorter if we tense it while we hold. So we need to remove the stress first and to keep them as parallel as possible. And this is a key. Very easy to do. We can use thicker thread if we want to make it more visible, more important. And now, just if we want to add a bit more accent, we can go with a needle on one side of the fabric and go on a diagonal, come out, create lines that are very easy to do. This way we are also helping the edge of the fabric to stay fixed, and we offer it more reinforcement. If you see on the back, it is fixed here. It is helping also for the resistance. It's not just for aesthetics. And now after we finish one side, we can return to close this with the same color, or we can return to close these little lines with a different color to close this it's very easy, but it creates a nice effect in a very short time. And we don't need to bother too much. We are only counting the threads on the way down. For the return, we already know where to put the needle. And again, we can do this return with a different color if we want a more sophisticated, more complicated effect. So this is done. When the thread is finished, we return on the back and we go again like in a U-turn to fix the thread with no knots. This is it, very simple and very pleasing. We will make a different type of keys now. We pretend that we need to unite these two pieces of fabric, both of them finished with hem. We go with the thread coming up through the fabric. We go inside the second hem, push through, come out, and even more, come out through this point where we first exit, and we have a line uniting these two sides. We go again through the same place where we entered the second hem, and in order to go farther we go through this little loop. And now we can move to the next step, which is again on the edge of the first piece of fabric, the left one, and we go right, we go again in the same point, again in the same point. It's like a chain stitch that we make, alternating on two pieces of fabric this way, uniting them. So we go on the right and we come out in the same point, we go in the same point on the right hem, and we come out going further up through this loop. These keys, we call them little fleas. I really don't know why. They are supposed to be small and fat. It will take a while until we will be able to make really constant moves. This is why it's good to push the needle through the edges of the hems and not very far from the edge. And again, it's important to count the threads as much as possible to create even steps for this stitch. But even if we have to unite hems, we can do the same keys with the knots that we saw previously. It would be easier to turn these pieces of fabric. We started again with a loop on one side. We'll go to make the next loop on the other side, making sure we fix it before moving further. And again through loops we progress, making sure we fix them before going any further. So it's the same key as we saw earlier, but this time we don't go through the little holes, we go on the edge of the hem. It's no need to make big feet because we have many points, and the keys will be resistant enough, so we don't need to be desperate and go this far. It's very much okay to stay even 2 threads, 3 from the edge of the hem, and we'll have a strong enough holding. The only point is that doing these keys this way, we have to be more careful when counting our steps, and we can use these little holes to make sure we step even distances, because we don't have the double little holes to pass through, and we have to be more careful for each move in order to have a constant stitch. It is important to remember that any traditional Romanian shirt smoked around the neck, it's created by the same formula, and it's all made of square or rectangular pieces of fabric that we protect along the edges, and we embroidered with a pattern, and only afterwards, after every piece is protected and decorated, in the end we come to the stage to unite the pieces together, to compose the puzzle, to recompose the puzzle. Here is this part of the fabric called altița. It's a separated piece. It's smaller pieces. It's smaller piece compared with the rest of the sleeve. It will fit on the shoulder, and this is the first piece we start to unite. So after we have it ready, we connect it with the sleeve. How to fix the gusset underarm at the intersection between the sleeve and the body of the shirt. And for many beginners, this is the most frightening part, because it is an intersection of three pieces of fabric. The gusset is basically a square. The edges are protected with a simple stitch, and then for uniting it with the keys, I have prepared another stitch, and this is how I will do the corner. To make sure it is straight and is not too much fabric doubled. So I bend it like this. But basically, even if you have this kind of protection for the edges, or if you decided to make a normal hem, it's important to know that you have to divide this square on its diagonal, and basically we will have to add it like this. We will first fix one corner here, and we will make the keys on this direction on the chest. With this side, we will connect it with keys on the sleeve. So half of the gusset will be fixed. And then we will simply turn the shirt on the other side, and we will fix the other two sides of the gusset. Afterwards, we will continue to fix with keys both sides of the sleeve up to the end, and we'll do the same from this intersection. We will unite the chest with the back. So this is the way, a very simple way to fix the gusset. If you make the shirt flat, it's much easier to understand how to fix this gusset into position. Because when you look on a finished shirt, it might seem confusing. Here I used the gusset from a cut of a fabric that I used before previously, and it's washed. That's why the shade, the color is a bit lightened compared with the rest, because it's been washed once, and this hemp fabric will get lighter and lighter with each wash. It will never become really, really white because we are not using bleach, but it will become lighter and lighter after each wash, and it will also become tighter and tighter. Here it has a different density, and it's a bit stiff because it is much easier for us to make the embroidery on a stiff fabric where we can follow and count the threads easier, compared with the moment when afterwards it will become dense. So after the gusset is fixed, you can see the square and you can see the way it was done. Uniting one side on the chest, one side on the sleeve, and then the other side on the back, the other side on the other part of the sleeve. And here afterwards the sleeve has its edges united quite close to the end, where we have this bracelet exactly exactly with the same model as the collar, and fixed on the fabric with a similar method. Only one it's positioned at the beginning of the shirt at the neck, and the other it's positioned at the finish, the end of the shirt, the end of the sleeve down. So here is how we will finish the connection between the sleeve and the back, and how we'll add the gusset along the way, making the keys. As you see, it's more difficult a little bit to hold this piece when it's short. And now we have the last step. Now it's the moment to include the gusset. As if it will simply continue It's nothing really more complicated than that. And once this side it's done to the end, we'll return here and connect this part. So I return to the origin point to continue uniting the gusset on the other side, and the first connection maybe is not through the gusset itself but through this little leg, let's say, little loop, to integrate somehow the stitch. These little holes are already waiting for my needle, and since I counted the threads when I made them, I'm quite sure now that all my steps are enough equal. It will take a few more minutes until I finish this size, and then I will return to complete the first one I started with, where I stopped here because my thread finished. And since I started a long new thread, I thought it will be just enough for one size. We will now see how we finish another side and how we'll continue to unite back and front for this side of the shirt. The other one is already finished. So we continue with the keys. Try not to tense the thread too much to keep it relaxed, and time to time we have to adjust the angle of the fabric. Try to keep the sides parallel, even though they don't want to stay parallel all the time. It's nothing really complicated. We just have to pretend we're having parallel lines. You know, it's all very easy. We're just uniting two sides, and we forced the gusset to fill in. And we will continue to the end. Since we have already united three sides of the gusset, two of them with the body, and then continued to unite the body, the chest to the back to the end, we go now to the last side, the fourth. From the edge of the sleeve to the edge of the gusset and then sleeve to sleeve. To the end of the sleeve, down. And the next step will be smoking here and fix everything into position with a bracelet. But for the moment, this is the last part, the easiest part, because everything else fit in place. So there is no more stress now. I'm using a long thread because I don't want it to finish in the middle of the process. I want it to last for my keys until I pass through this point. Here is the same method to prepare both the collar and the bracelet for finishing down the sleeves. And when to start, it doesn't look encouraging at all. We have a small piece of fabric where the pattern represents 1/4, let's say, of the whole size. And when we work on it, we don't necessarily take care of the edges, because all of them will fit inside and will be protected by default. But once we cut the exact piece we need for this, we make sure, first of all, that we bend the extra fabric left on the sizes, so this edge will be protected, will be inside the sleeve. There is no need to make other functional stitch to protect it. The same goes for this one. And it would be useful to insist on this edge with an iron, if you have, easy to handle. If not, you just have to insist with your fingers to press it to make it stay this way. And then you also bend the fabric on the edge of the embroidery. Make sure the edge is as correct as possible. And then turn it on the other side. And then this edge, you have to quickly make it stay together with the other one. You don't have to insist, because again, this is a piece of the fabric that will never be exposed, really. At the end, we will bend this once more, and all the edges of the fabric will be hidden inside the bracelet. So there is no point to invest too much time and effort into protecting these edges. So with big steps, we just make sure the edges stay connected. Because in the end, I will show you right now, in the end, we will just bend the fabric once again, so everything is already protected and hidden, and this will be added on the edge of the sleeve after we finish with the smoking. So now I have to prepare the edge of the sleeve to fit in the bracelet, and I have 5 threads that will help me with the smoking, and I can already fix one side and tie them together a few times. Make sure it's a tight knot. For this one, I'll just make a couple out of the last 2 threads, make a knot with the 3rd one. This way I will fix everything in one end of the sleeve. And now I'll make it shrink from the other side. And I have here best measurements. Don't use a meter, and just making sure they fit here. Quite did it. So just a little bit longer. So I will stretch a bit more. Check once more to make sure, because once I make the knots on the other side, it's fixed and it's difficult to change, to make it larger again. So I think it's just perfect. So I will make the knots here as well. The same. In case the measurement is a bit wrong, I can still change it a little bit, because I can make it tighter but not larger. So there's the issue. Now, once I'm convinced that I have the right distance, I can rearrange all these crests to make them as much uniform as possible, to equalize them. And I will do this step by step also when I fix the bracelet on top of it, because until this is fixed on top, I can still move easily. But that's the whole point, to add this on the edge, not only to protect the edge, but also to make it fix final. This is not the final stage yet. I am fixing with a temporary stitch the bracelet on top of the edge of the sleeve with a very simple stitch, just to make sure it stays in place for the right position. This is just temporary to make all the process easier, because it's a it's quite curved, and it tends to move all the time, and it's a waste of time to stop from work and check or fix on it. That's why it's much easier to spend a few minutes and hold this in place. As you can see, it's not something complicated. Just make sure you make the work easier for you. You can also arrange a little bit the distance to make everything as equal as possible, even from this moment. And so to the end. Time to time you can check on the other side to make sure you are on the middle. And then when everything is finished, we start to make the final stitch on this edge here to fix it strong with small steps. And then we will turn it on the other side and bend it like this, and we will fix it on the back, and that will be the final stitches. So this is how I make the final stitch, the resistant one, on the front of the shirt, for fixing the bracelet on the edge of the sleeve. You can maybe best use the same color as used for the embroidery, or you can use a neutral color of thread, but I always make sure I make it hidden. See, because I turn this a little bit, and even if it's slightly different, it won't be visible. And then from the back I come again in an edge of the embroidery where it won't be visible, and make small steps this time, because they are final and I need many points, and I tense the thread as much as possible to keep everything fixed in place. So this all along the distance to the end. We still see the temporary stitch used, and you can see I can still move and make everything equal. Control this a little bit while I'm doing the final stitches, because this is final. So I can now, what I arrange now, it will be the final look. Now it's a moment to fix everything on the back once the front is already done, and we make sure that the embroidery is really on the edge, because this way it will show its only face. So now is the moment to make small steps on the back. It turns the fabric a little bit towards us to make sure again that the embroidery will stay on the edge. So with each step I pass through a crest, and then I take the needle out just a little bit more to the left and prepare for the next step. It's not necessarily to do each crest, especially when the fabric is finer and we have many more of them. But no, it's okay. And each time we move a little bit to the left, again we make sure that we fit the embroidery on the corner, on the edge of the bracelet. So now the shirt is ready to be washed. The fabric will change a lot, it will shrink, the texture will become more dense, it will lighten up a little bit, and to make sure I have it ready for wearing, I will wash it twice actually. First time I will just leave it with a little bit of shampoo, and after 20-30 minutes I will put it in the washing machine with 1200 for spinning, and then I will let it dry a little bit and I will wash it once more, just to make sure the texture changes enough. And then I will leave it outside on the balcony maybe for half hour, because it's quite hot here, and it will be turned inside out. I don't want the sun to interfere with the colors. And then I will iron it with iron set on linen with a maximum, because hemp and linen are very similar in terms of fiber and properties. And by the time we have the workshop, you'll see me already wearing it. Thank you very much. I hope this will be helpful.